What if success isn't about talent, but about thinking differently? This audiobook will reveal the hidden mental frameworks the elite use to win, lead, and stay ahead, no matter your background. Are you ready to think like the top 1%? Chapter 1: The Success Filter. How the Elite See What Others Miss. The human brain processes over 11 million bits of information per second, yet we can only consciously handle about 40. This creates a fundamental challenge. In a world overflowing with data, opportunities, and distractions, what you choose to focus on literally determines your reality. The elite have mastered something most people never even realize exists: the success filter. While average performers get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information competing for their attention, elite achievers have developed an almost supernatural ability to zero in on what matters and completely ignore what doesn't. This isn't about being naturally gifted or having superhuman focus. It's about training your mind to see patterns that others miss, and to filter out the noise that keeps most people spinning their wheels. Think about Warren Buffett, reading hundreds of annual reports to find one exceptional investment opportunity, or a professional athlete who can spot the subtle shift in an opponent's body language that telegraphs their next move. These aren't accidents. They're the result of deliberately training their perception to notice what moves the needle while filtering out everything else. The success filter operates on 3 distinct levels. First is the macro level, the ability to see long-term trends and opportunities that others miss because they're too focused on short-term fluctuations. While most people react to daily market movements, political headlines, or social media drama, the elite are scanning for the deeper currents that will shape the next decade. They're asking different questions. What technologies will be dominant in 10 years? What demographic shifts will create new markets? What problems are emerging that don't have solutions yet? The second level is tactical filtering, the ability to identify high-leverage activities within their current sphere of operation. This is where the 80-20 principle becomes not just a concept but a lived reality. Elite performers instinctively know which 20% of their activities will generate 80% of their results, and they ruthlessly eliminate or delegate everything else. They don't just work hard, they work on the right things. The third level is moment-to-moment filtering, the ability to maintain focus on their chosen priorities despite constant interruptions and temptations. This is perhaps the most difficult because it requires saying no to good opportunities to save energy for great ones. The elite understand that attention is finite, and every yes to one thing is an automatic no to everything else. But how do you develop this filtering ability? It starts with clarity about your ultimate objectives. Most people operate with vague goals like be successful or make money. The elite get specific. They know exactly what they're trying to achieve by when and why it matters to them. This clarity acts like a lighthouse, making it easy to identify which opportunities align with their direction and which are attractive distractions. Next, they actively study their field to understand what really drives results. They don't just follow best practices, they study the underlying principles that make those practices work. This deep understanding allows them to spot opportunities and threats that others miss, because they can see the cause and effect relationships that govern their domain. Elite performers also develop what psychologists call selective attention, the ability to consciously direct their focus toward relevant information while ignoring irrelevant stimuli. They practice this like a skill, regularly exposing themselves to information-rich environments and training themselves to identify what matters quickly. They might read industry reports specifically looking for weak signals of change, or study their competitors not to copy them but to spot gaps in the market. Perhaps most importantly, they create systems and environments that support their filtering process. They design their physical spaces, digital tools, and daily routines to minimize distractions and maximize their exposure to high-value information. They might use specific news sources, subscribe to particular newsletters, or set up alerts for certain keywords, all designed to ensure the right information reaches them without overwhelming them with noise. The elite also understand the power of negative filtering, actively avoiding certain types of information and environments that don't serve their goals. They might avoid social media during work hours, skip industry events that don't offer real value, or stop reading news sources that focus on drama rather than substance. This isn't about being ignorant. It's about being intentional. One of the most powerful aspects of the success filter is its compounding effect. As elite performers get better at identifying what matters, they make better decisions, Better decisions lead to better results, which provide more data about what works and what doesn't. This creates a virtuous cycle where their filtering ability becomes increasingly sophisticated over time. The success filter also extends to relationships and opportunities. Elite performers quickly assess whether a potential partnership, investment, or project aligns with their strategic objectives. They've learned to recognize patterns in people and situations that indicate likely outcomes. This allows them to say yes to the right opportunities and no to everything else, without agonizing over every decision. This filtering ability becomes particularly crucial during times of rapid change or high uncertainty. While others get paralyzed by information overload or conflicting signals, the elite can quickly separate signal from noise and maintain their strategic focus. They understand that in volatile environments, the ability to filter information effectively becomes an even greater competitive advantage. The development of a success filter requires constant calibration. Elite performers regularly review their decisions and outcomes to refine their filtering criteria. They ask themselves, what did I focus on that didn't matter? What important signals did I miss? How can I improve my ability to identify what's truly important? This isn't about becoming narrow-minded or ignoring potential risks. The best filters are actually quite sophisticated, accounting for multiple variables and potential scenarios, but they help elite performers cut through the complexity to focus on what will actually drive their success forward. Chapter 2. Comfort is the enemy. Why growth demands discomfort. Every significant achievement in human history has required someone to step outside their comfort zone. Yet, most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid discomfort, creating elaborate systems and routines designed to minimize risk, uncertainty, and challenge. The elite have discovered something counterintuitive. Comfort isn't just the absence of growth, it's the enemy of it. While others retreat from discomfort, elite performers have learned to use it as a compass, actively seeking out situations that challenge them because they understand that growth lives exclusively on the other side of comfort. This isn't about seeking pain for its own sake, or being reckless with their safety. It's about recognizing that every skill worth developing, every goal worth achieving, and every person worth becoming requires traveling through uncomfortable territory. The comfort zone isn't actually a zone at all, it's a prison. When we stay within familiar boundaries, our brains stop creating new neural pathways, our skills stagnate, our confidence remains tied to a narrow range of experiences. We become increasingly fragile, unable to handle unexpected challenges or opportunities, because we've trained ourselves to avoid anything that is uncertain or difficult. Elite performers understand that discomfort is information. When they feel resistance, anxiety, or fear about a particular action or decision, they don't automatically retreat. Instead, they lean in and investigate. What is this discomfort telling them? Is it warning them about a genuine danger, or is it simply their nervous system responding to unfamiliarity? More often than not, they discover that the discomfort is pointing them toward exactly where they need to go. Consider how elite athletes train. They don't just practice their existing skills, they deliberately put themselves in uncomfortable situations where they're likely to fail. A tennis player might practice returning serves that are faster than anything they'll face in competition. A basketball player might practice shooting while exhausted and under pressure. They understand that adaptation happens at the edge of current capability, not in the middle of their comfort zone. This principle extends far beyond athletics. Elite entrepreneurs regularly put themselves in situations where they don't know what they're doing. They launch products before they feel ready, enter markets they don't fully understand, and take on challenges that stretch their current capabilities. They've learned that the feeling of "I'm not ready for this" is often the best indicator that they're about to grow. The elite have also discovered that discomfort is temporary, but the growth that comes from pushing through it is permanent. Most people overestimate how long discomfort will last, and underestimate their ability to adapt to new challenges. The elite have trained themselves to take a longer view, understanding that today's stretch becomes tomorrow's comfort zone. This doesn't mean they're immune to fear or anxiety. They feel all the same emotions as everyone else when facing uncertain or challenging situations. The difference is in their response. Instead of interpreting these feelings as stop signs, they interpret them as starting guns. Fear becomes excitement. Anxiety becomes anticipation. Uncertainty becomes possibility. Elite performers actively design discomfort into their lives. They set goals that feel slightly impossible. They commit to deadlines that require them to work at a higher level than they've ever sustained before. They put themselves in rooms where they're the least experienced person. They volunteer for projects that are outside their area of expertise. This isn't masochism, it's strategic growth engineering. They also understand the difference between productive discomfort and destructive discomfort. Productive discomfort comes from stretching your capabilities, facing your fears, or tackling challenges that align with your goals. Destructive discomfort comes from toxic relationships, environments that don't support your growth, or activities that drain your energy without providing learning opportunities. The elite seek the first and avoid the second. One of the most powerful forms of productive discomfort is vulnerability. Elite performers are willing to look foolish, ask questions that might seem basic, and admit when they don't know something. While others hide their ignorance to protect their ego, the elite expose their gaps to fill them. They understand that temporary embarrassment is a small price to pay for permanent learning. The relationship with discomfort also extends to feedback and criticism. Most people avoid situations where they might receive negative feedback because it feels uncomfortable. Elite performers actively seek out feedback, especially critical feedback, because they know it contains the information they need to improve. They've trained themselves to separate their ego from their performance, allowing them to use criticism as data rather than taking it as personal attack. Physical discomfort is another area where the elite distinguish themselves. They understand that the body and mind are connected, and that building tolerance for physical discomfort through exercise, cold exposure, or other challenges builds mental resilience as well. They don't avoid hard workouts or challenging physical experiences. They seek them out as training for life's broader challenges. The elite also embrace emotional discomfort. They're willing to have difficult conversations, set boundaries that might upset others, and make decisions that feel scary but align with their long-term objectives. While others avoid conflict or difficult decisions to maintain short-term comfort, elite performers understand that temporary emotional discomfort often prevents much larger problems down the road. Perhaps most importantly, the elite have learned to reframe their relationship with failure. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid, they see it as valuable data about what doesn't work. They understand that failure is often the fastest path to learning, and that avoiding the possibility of failure means avoiding the possibility of significant success. This comfort with discomfort becomes a massive competitive advantage. While others hesitate at the edge of their comfort zone, weighing risks and looking for guarantees, elite performers are already moving forward. They understand that in a rapidly changing world, the ability to adapt quickly and learn continuously is more valuable than any specific skill or knowledge. The cultivation of comfort with discomfort is a practice, not a destination. Elite performers regularly challenge themselves in new ways, ensuring that they maintain their ability to grow and adapt. They understand that comfort is seductive, and that without conscious effort, anyone can slip into patterns that prioritize ease over growth. Chapter 3: Discipline over motivation. Winning when you don't feel like it. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like weather. Sometimes it's a beautiful sunny day where everything feels possible, and sometimes it's a cold, grey morning where even getting out of bed feels like a monumental task. The elite learned long ago that building a life of achievement on the foundation of motivation is like building a house on quicksand. Instead, they've mastered something far more powerful and dependable: discipline. While most people wait to feel motivated before taking action, elite performers have flipped this relationship entirely. They take action regardless of how they feel, understanding that motivation often follows action rather than preceding it. They've discovered that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do things you hate. It's about training yourself to do what needs to be done, regardless of your emotional state. This distinction is crucial because it reveals why so many talented people never reach their potential. They mistake motivation for commitment. They confuse inspiration for dedication. When the initial excitement of a new goal wears off, and it always does, they conclude that they've lost interest or that the goal wasn't right for them. The elite understand that this moment, when motivation fades, is precisely when the real work begins. Discipline is a skill that can be developed, and like any skill, it requires practice. Elite performers treat discipline like a muscle that grows stronger with use. They start with small challenges and gradually increase the difficulty, building their capacity to act against their immediate feelings or impulses. They might begin by making their bed every morning regardless of how they feel, then progress to maintaining a workout routine, then to working on important projects even when they don't feel inspired. The elite have also discovered that discipline is not about willpower alone. Willpower is finite, you only have so much of it each day, and it gets depleted with use. Instead, they've learned to create systems and structures that make disciplined behavior easier and undisciplined behavior harder. They design their environment to support their goals rather than relying purely on mental strength to overcome obstacles. For example, an elite performer who wants to write a book doesn't just rely on feeling inspired to write. They create a dedicated writing space, eliminate distractions, set a specific time each day for writing, and have everything they need ready before they sit down. They remove the friction from the desired behavior and add friction to competing behaviors. When writing time comes, they sit down and write regardless of whether they feel like it. This systematic approach extends to every area of their lives. Elite athletes don't just train when they feel energetic. They have structured training schedules that they follow regardless of their mood. Elite entrepreneurs don't just work on their business when they feel passionate. They have daily and weekly routines that ensure consistent progress regardless of how they feel about the work on any given day. The elite understand that emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. Feelings of excitement, boredom, frustration, or inspiration will all pass. What remains constant is the commitment to their goals and the systems they've built to achieve them. They've learned to observe their emotions without being controlled by them, using them as information rather than instructions. One of the most powerful aspects of discipline is its compounding effect. Each time you act, despite not feeling like it, you build evidence for yourself that you can be relied upon. This self-trust becomes incredibly valuable because it allows you to make bigger commitments and take on greater challenges, knowing that you'll follow through regardless of how you feel along the way. The elite also understand that discipline in one area often transfers to other areas. Someone who develops the discipline to maintain a consistent exercise routine often finds it easier to maintain discipline in their work or relationships. This is because discipline is fundamentally about the ability to delay gratification and act in alignment with long-term goals rather than short-term impulses. However, elite performers don't just rely on brute force discipline. They've learned to work with their psychology rather than against it. They understand their own patterns when their energy is highest, when they're most likely to procrastinate, what triggers their resistance, and they design their approach accordingly. If they know they're not a morning person, they don't schedule their most important work for 6 a.m. just because someone told them that's what successful people do. They also build in rewards and recovery. Discipline doesn't mean being harsh with yourself or never taking breaks. The elite understand that sustainable high performance requires both intense effort and strategic recovery. They schedule rest, celebrate progress, and create positive associations with disciplined behavior rather than treating it as punishment. Another key aspect of elite discipline is the ability to restart quickly after breaks or failures. Everyone has days when they don't follow through on their commitments. The difference is that most people use one missed day as evidence that they've failed and give up entirely. Elite performers treat missed days as temporary setbacks and immediately return to their disciplined behavior the next day. They don't let perfect be the enemy of consistent. The elite have also learned to distinguish between discipline and rigidity. Discipline is about consistent action toward important goals. Rigidity is about following rules regardless of circumstances. Elite performers are disciplined in their commitment to results, but flexible in their methods. If one approach isn't working, they adjust their tactics while maintaining their commitment to the outcome. This flexibility extends to their relationship with discipline itself. They regularly evaluate their systems and routines to ensure they're still serving their goals. What worked when they were starting out might not work as their situation changes. The elite are disciplined about being disciplined. They consistently work on improving their systems and structures rather than just following them blindly. Perhaps most importantly, the elite understand that discipline is ultimately about identity. Each disciplined action is a vote for the kind of person they want to become. When they exercise despite not feeling like it, they're reinforcing their identity as someone who takes care of their health. When they work on important projects despite feeling uninspired, they're reinforcing their identity as someone who follows through on commitments. This identity-based approach to discipline makes it much more sustainable, because it's not just about achieving specific goals, it's about becoming the kind of person who naturally does what needs to be done. The elite, don't just want to write a book, they want to become a writer. They don't just want to lose weight, they want to become someone who takes care of their body. This shift in perspective makes discipline feel less like deprivation and more like self-expression. The cultivation of discipline is ultimately about freedom, the freedom to choose your response to any situation, the freedom to act in alignment with your values regardless of how you feel, and the freedom to build the life you want rather than settling for the life that happens to you. While others remain slaves to their moods and impulses, the elite have earned the freedom that comes from mastering themselves. Chapter 4: Thinking in Decades. The long game that changes everything. Time is the most democratic resource on Earth. Everyone gets 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Yet the elite seem to accomplish exponentially more than the average person. Not because they work more hours, but because they think in fundamentally different time horizons. While most people optimize for days, weeks, or at best quarters, elite performers are playing a game measured in decades. This extended time perspective isn't just about patience, it's about understanding the profound difference between linear and exponential growth. Most people expect their efforts to pay off quickly, and in direct proportion to their input. They work for a week and expect to see a week's worth of progress. The elite understand that meaningful achievement follows exponential curves, where early efforts may show little visible progress, but persistence over years creates dramatic, seemingly overnight success. Consider how Amazon's Jeff Bezos approached building his company. While competitors focused on quarterly profits and immediate market share, Bezos was thinking about what the internet would look like in 20 years. He was willing to lose money for years, reinvesting every dollar back into infrastructure and customer experience, because he could see how small advantages would compound over decades into insurmountable competitive moats. This long-term thinking fundamentally changes how elite performers make decisions. They're not asking what will give me the quickest return, but rather, what will position me best for the world that's coming. They plant seeds knowing they won't see the full harvest for years, but understanding that this patience is precisely what gives them their competitive advantage. The compound interest of time works in every domain, not just finance. In relationships, small, consistent investments in trust and connection compound into deep, lasting bonds. In skills, daily practice that seems insignificant creates mastery that appears magical to those who only see the end result. In reputation, consistent ethical behavior and quality work compounds into opportunities that can't be bought at any price. Elite performers also understand that time arbitrage, being willing to wait when others won't, is one of the most powerful forms of competitive advantage. While others chase quick wins and immediate gratification, the elite are willing to endure short-term discomfort for long-term positioning. They'll spend years building capabilities that don't immediately pay off, knowing that when the right opportunity arrives, they'll be prepared while others scramble to catch up. This extended time horizon also protects the elite from the volatility that derails most people's progress. When you're thinking in decades, daily fluctuations become noise rather than signal. A bad quarter doesn't cause panic. It's just data. A temporary setback doesn't derail the entire strategy. It's just a step in a longer journey. This emotional stability, born from temporal perspective, allows elite performers to stay consistent when others are reactive. The elite also understand that different activities have different time horizons for payoff, and they allocate their efforts accordingly. They might spend 70% of their time on activities that will pay off in the next year, 20% on activities that will pay off in 3 to 5 years, and 10% on activities that won't pay off for a decade or more. This portfolio approach ensures both short-term sustainability and long-term exponential growth. One of the most powerful applications of decade-level thinking is in skill development. While others jump from opportunity to opportunity, chasing the latest trend or quick certification, elite performers identify a few key capabilities and develop them relentlessly over years. They understand that true expertise, the kind that creates massive value and can't be easily replicated, takes approximately 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, which translates to roughly a decade of consistent effort. But elite performers don't just think about their own development over decades. They think about how entire industries and markets will evolve. They study demographic trends, technological adoption curves, and societal shifts to identify where the world is heading, then position themselves to benefit from these long-term changes. While others react to change after it happens, the elite are already positioned for the change they saw coming years earlier. This long-term perspective also influences how the elite approach relationships and network building. They don't just network for immediate benefit. They build relationships that will be valuable over decades. They stay in touch with people who may not be useful today, but will be influential tomorrow. They invest in relationships with people who are currently junior, but show potential for future leadership. They understand that the most valuable relationships are those that deepen over time. The elite also think about legacy and impact over decades. They're not just building businesses or careers, they're building institutions, systems, and contributions that will outlast them. This perspective gives their work deeper meaning and sustains their motivation through difficult periods. They're playing a game where the score is tallied, not just in their lifetime, but in the decades that follow. However, thinking in decades doesn't mean ignoring the present or being passive about immediate opportunities. Elite performers are excellent at balancing long-term strategy with short-term execution. They have clear quarterly and annual goals that serve their decade-level vision. They're constantly asking how their current activities connect to their long-term objectives, ensuring that their daily actions compound toward their ultimate destination. The elite also understand that decade-level thinking requires decade-level learning. They don't just acquire knowledge for immediate application. They build deep, foundational understanding that will remain relevant as circumstances change. They study principles rather than just tactics, understanding that principles are timeless while tactics are temporary. This extended time horizon also influences how elite performers handle criticism and praise. When you're thinking in decades, individual opinions matter less. A negative review today doesn't derail a 20-year vision. Positive feedback doesn't create complacency because there's still so much work to be done. This emotional independence, born from temporal perspective, allows the elite to stay focused on their long-term objectives regardless of short-term feedback. Perhaps most importantly, thinking in decades changes how the elite view failure and setbacks. When you're playing a game measured in decades, individual failures become learning experiences rather than verdicts. A failed product launch isn't the end of the story, it's valuable data for the next iteration. A business that doesn't work out isn't a personal failure, it's education for the next venture. This resilience born from long-term perspective allows elite performers to take bigger risks and recover faster from setbacks. The cultivation of decade-level thinking requires intentional practice. Elite performers regularly zoom out from their daily activities to consider their long-term trajectory. They set decade-level goals, review their progress annually, and adjust their strategies based on new information while maintaining their long-term direction. They understand that the ability to think and act across extended time horizons is not natural, it's a skill that must be developed and maintained. Chapter 5. Rejection is data. How the elite handle criticism and failure. Most people experience rejection as a personal attack on their worth, competence, or potential. A no becomes evidence that they're not good enough, smart enough, or deserving enough. This emotional interpretation of rejection creates a devastating feedback loop. The fear of rejection prevents them from taking risks, asking for what they want, or putting their ideas into the world, which guarantees they'll never achieve their full potential. The elite have fundamentally reframed their relationship with rejection. Instead of seeing it as a judgment on their character, they've learned to see it as information about the world. Every no contains data about timing, fit, market conditions, or their current approach. This shift from emotional interpretation to analytical processing transforms rejection from a stopping point into a navigation tool. Consider how elite salespeople approach rejection. While average salespeople might hear no and assume the prospect isn't interested, elite performers dig deeper. Is this no about price, timing, authority, need, or something else entirely? They understand that no rarely means never. It usually means not now, not this way, or not for this reason. By treating rejection as data rather than judgment, they can adjust their approach, and often turn initial rejections into eventual successes. This analytical approach to rejection extends far beyond sales. Elite entrepreneurs understand that rejection from investors, customers, or partners is valuable market research. Each rejection teaches them something about their product, their pitch, their timing, or their target market. Instead of taking rejection personally, they systematically collect and analyze this feedback to improve their offering or find better fit opportunities. The elite also understand that rejection is often about circumstances rather than quality. A publisher might reject a book, not because it's poorly written, but because they already have similar titles in their catalog. The job candidate might be rejected not because they lack qualifications, but because the company has internal political considerations. By understanding that rejection often has nothing to do with their inherent worth or capability, elite performers can maintain their confidence while extracting useful information from the experience. One of the most powerful aspects of treating rejection as data is that it removes the emotional charge that typically paralyzes people. When you're not taking rejection personally, you can ask better questions. What specifically didn't work? What could I do differently next time? Who would be a better fit for this approach? This curiosity replaces defensiveness and allows for genuine learning and improvement. Elite performers also understand that rejection is often a filtering mechanism that helps them find the right opportunities and relationships. Not every investor is right for their company. Not every customer is part of their target market. Not every job is a good fit for their skills and goals. By experiencing rejection, they're not just being told no, they're being helped to find the right yes. This perspective is particularly powerful when it comes to creative work. Elite artists, writers, and innovators understand that their work won't resonate with everyone, and that's exactly as it should be. If something appeals to everyone, it probably doesn't appeal strongly to anyone. Rejection helps them identify their true audience and refine their work to serve that audience better. The elite have also learned to seek out rejection proactively. Instead of avoiding situations where they might be rejected, they actively put themselves in positions where rejection is likely because they understand that it's the fastest path to learning and improvement. They submit proposals they're not sure will be accepted, apply for opportunities they might not get, and pitch ideas that might be turned down. This proactive approach to rejection accelerates their learning and increases their eventual success rate. However, the elite don't just collect rejection randomly. They're strategic about it. They seek rejection from people whose opinions matter and who can provide valuable feedback. Getting rejected by someone who doesn't understand their field or isn't their target audience provides little useful data. Getting rejected by someone who is exactly their target customer or ideal partner provides invaluable insights that can improve their approach. The elite also understand that different types of rejection require different responses. Some rejection is about their current approach and suggests tactical adjustments. Other rejection might indicate that they're targeting the wrong market entirely and require strategic pivots. The most challenging type of rejection suggests that their fundamental assumptions might be wrong and requires them to question their core beliefs about their product, service, or approach. This analytical approach to rejection extends to criticism as well. While most people become defensive when criticized, elite performers become curious. They separate the delivery from the content, looking for kernels of truth even in harshly delivered feedback. They understand that criticism, even when poorly communicated, often contains information that can help them improve. The elite have also learned to distinguish between constructive rejection and destructive rejection. Constructive rejection provides specific feedback about what didn't work and why. Destructive rejection is vague, personal, or designed to hurt rather than help. Elite performers pay attention to constructive rejection and ignore destructive rejection, understanding that not all feedback is created equal. Perhaps most importantly, the elite understand that rejection is temporary while learning is permanent. A specific opportunity might be closed to them today, but the knowledge they gain from being rejected improves their chances with future opportunities. They're playing a longer game where each rejection makes them stronger and more capable. This mindset also helps elite performers take bigger risks. When you understand that rejection won't kill you, it will educate you. You become willing to attempt things that others wouldn't dare try. You can apply for stretch opportunities, propose ambitious projects, and put forward innovative ideas, because you know that even if they're rejected, you'll learn something valuable in the process. The elite also use rejection as motivation rather than discouragement. Instead of thinking, I guess I'm not good enough, they think, I guess I need to get better. Rejection becomes fuel for improvement rather than evidence of inadequacy. This reframe is crucial, because it maintains forward momentum rather than creating the paralysis that stops most people after experiencing rejection. The cultivation of this rejection as data mindset requires practice and conscious effort. Elite performers regularly review their rejections to extract lessons and identify patterns. They celebrate the learning that comes from rejection alongside the success that comes from acceptance. They understand that developing a healthy relationship with rejection is essential for anyone who wants to operate at the highest levels, because at the elite level, rejection is not occasional, it's constant. By treating rejection as data rather than judgment, elite performers gain access to opportunities and learning that remain closed to others. They can take bigger risks, learn faster, and ultimately achieve outcomes that would be impossible for someone who remains paralyzed by the fear of hearing no. Chapter 6. Extreme ownership. No excuses, no victimhood, no limits. The moment you blame someone or something else for your circumstances, you give away your power to change them. This profound truth separates elite performers from everyone else more than talent, intelligence, or luck ever could. While most people instinctively look for external factors to explain their failures and limitations, the elite have embraced a philosophy that initially seems harsh, but ultimately proves liberating. Extreme ownership. Extreme ownership means taking complete responsibility for everything in your sphere of influence, even when, especially when things go wrong, for reasons that seem completely outside your control. It's not about accepting blame for things you genuinely didn't cause, it's about accepting responsibility for your response to everything that happens to you. This distinction is crucial because it's the difference between victimhood and empowerment. When elite performers face setbacks, their first question isn't whose fault is this, or why did this happen to me? Instead, they ask, what could I have done differently? And how can I respond to this situation in a way that moves me closer to my goals? This shift in questioning immediately moves them from a powerless position to a powerful one, from being a victim of circumstances to being an agent of change. This principle was perhaps most powerfully demonstrated by Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL commander who popularized the term extreme ownership. When his team's missions failed, his instinct wasn't to blame his subordinates, the equipment, or the intelligence. Instead, he looked at how he could have led better, communicated more clearly, or prepared more thoroughly. This approach didn't just improve his team's performance, it created a culture where everyone took ownership of their role in both successes and failures. The elite understand that blame is a luxury they can't afford. While others waste time and energy identifying who's at fault, elite performers are already focused on solutions. They recognize that even when external factors contribute to their problems, their response to those factors is entirely within their control. A market crash might affect everyone, but how you prepare for it, respond to it, and recover from it is entirely up to you. This ownership mentality extends beyond obvious failures to include missed opportunities and unrealized potential. Elite performers don't blame bad timing when they miss opportunities. They take ownership of their preparation and positioning. They don't blame politics when they're passed over for promotions. They take ownership of their relationship building and visibility. They understand that while they can't control everything that happens to them, they can control their readiness for whatever comes. Extreme ownership is particularly powerful when dealing with other people's behavior. Instead of being frustrated by difficult colleagues, demanding customers, or unresponsive partners, elite performers ask themselves what they could do differently to influence better outcomes. They might change their communication style, adjust their expectations, or modify their approach. This doesn't mean accepting poor treatment, but rather focusing on what they can control instead of being victimized by what they can't. The elite also apply extreme ownership to their emotional states. Instead of saying, "You made me angry," or "This situation is stressing me out," they recognize that their emotional responses are their responsibility. They might say, "I'm choosing to feel angry about this," or "I'm allowing this situation to stress me." This subtle shift in language reflects a profound shift in mindset, from being at the mercy of external circumstances to being in control of their own experience. This ownership mentality is particularly crucial when it comes to learning and development. Elite performers don't blame poor teachers, inadequate resources, or difficult circumstances for their lack of growth. They take ownership of their learning, finding ways to extract value from any situation and seeking out the resources they need. If a seminar is poorly taught, they still find something useful. If a book is badly written, they still extract applicable insight. They understand that their development is their responsibility, regardless of the quality of external inputs. However, extreme ownership isn't about self-flagellation or accepting responsibility for things genuinely outside your influence. It's about maintaining focus on what you can control rather than being distracted by what you can't. Elite performers might acknowledge that external factors contributed to a problem while still taking ownership of their response to those factors. The elite also understand that extreme ownership is ultimately about freedom. When you accept that you're responsible for your results, you also accept that you have the power to change those results. When you believe that external factors determine your success, you become dependent on those factors changing in your favor. When you take ownership, you become the primary variable in your own success equation. This philosophy extends to team leadership as well. Elite leaders don't throw their team members under the bus when projects fail. Instead, they take ownership of the failure while giving their team ownership of successes. This approach builds tremendous loyalty and creates a culture where team members are willing to take risks and assume responsibility themselves. Extreme ownership also applies to preparation and prevention. Elite performers don't just take ownership of their responses to problems, they take ownership of preventing problems in the first place. They ask themselves what could go wrong and take steps to mitigate those risks. They don't wait for problems to occur and then blame bad luck. They take ownership of their preparation and risk management. This proactive ownership mindset creates a powerful psychological shift. Instead of feeling like victims of circumstance, elite performers feel like architects of their destiny. Instead of hoping things will go well, they take responsibility for making things go well. This sense of agency and control becomes a source of tremendous confidence and resilience. The practice of extreme ownership also improves decision-making quality. When you know you'll be taking full responsibility for the consequences of your choices, you naturally become more thoughtful about those choices. You consider more variables, seek more input, and think through potential outcomes more thoroughly. This heightened decision-making discipline compounds over time into significantly better life outcomes. Elite performers understand that extreme ownership is not a one-time decision, but a daily practice. Every day presents opportunities to either take ownership or make excuses, to focus on what you can control or complain about what you can't. The elite have trained themselves to consistently choose ownership, even when it's uncomfortable or when blame would be easier. Perhaps most powerfully, extreme ownership transforms how elite performers view their entire life story. Instead of seeing themselves as victims of their circumstances, upbringing, or bad luck, they see themselves as the authors of their own story. They understand that while they didn't choose their starting point, they can choose their direction. This perspective is incredibly empowering, because it means that no matter what has happened in the past, they have the power to create a different future. The cultivation of extreme ownership requires constant vigilance against the human tendency to externalize blame. Elite performers regularly audit their thinking, catching themselves when they start to blame external factors and redirecting their focus to what they can control. They understand that ownership is a muscle that must be exercised regularly to stay strong. Chapter 7: Energy as Currency. How the elite guard their focus and time. In the industrial age, the most valuable resource was capital. Money to buy equipment and hire workers. In the information age, the most valuable resource has become something far more personal and finite: your energy and attention. The elite have recognized this shift before most others, and they guard their mental and physical energy with the same intensity that others guard their bank accounts. While most people treat their energy as unlimited and their attention as free, elite performers understand that both are finite resources that must be carefully managed and strategically allocated. They've learned that where they direct their attention and how they manage their energy determines not just their productivity, but the quality of their thinking, the depth of their relationships, and ultimately, the trajectory of their entire life. This energy-centric worldview fundamentally changes how elite performers structure their days, design their environments, and make decisions about how to spend their time. They don't just ask, "What should I do today?" but rather, "What deserves my best energy today?" They understand that not all hours are created equal. An hour of deep work when they're fresh and focused can be worth more than 3 hours of scattered effort when they're tired and distracted. Elite performers have become students of their own energy patterns. They know when their mental energy peaks, when their creative energy flows, and when their social energy is highest. They've mapped their natural rhythms and designed their schedules accordingly. If they're most creative in the morning, that's when they tackle their most important creative work, not when it's convenient or when others expect them to be available. This energy awareness extends beyond just time of day to include understanding what activities give them energy versus what activities drain it. Elite performers actively seek out energy-giving activities and ruthlessly eliminate or minimize energy-draining ones. They might discover that certain types of meetings leave them energized while others leave them depleted, or that certain environments boost their focus while others scatter their attention. The elite also understand the concept of attention residue, how switching between tasks leaves traces of the previous task in your mind, reducing your effectiveness on the current task. While others pride themselves on multitasking, elite performers practice monotasking, giving their full attention to one thing at a time. They understand that divided attention is diminished attention, and that the illusion of productivity from multitasking actually reduces their overall effectiveness. This focus on attention management has led elite performers to become incredibly protective of their mental environment. They carefully curate what information they consume, understanding that everything they read, watch, or listen to affects their mental state and thinking quality. They might limit news consumption to specific times, unsubscribe from email lists that don't provide value, or avoid social media during work hours. They treat their attention like a garden, carefully planting what they want to grow and weeding out what doesn't serve them. The elite have also learned to say no to energy-draining commitments, even when those commitments might seem beneficial or prestigious. They understand that every yes to one thing is an automatic no to everything else, and they're willing to disappoint others in the short term to preserve their energy for their highest priorities. This might mean declining social invitations when they need to recharge, turning down speaking opportunities that don't align with their goals, or ending relationships that consistently drain their energy. Physical energy management is equally important to elite performers. They understand that mental performance is directly connected to physical state, and they invest heavily in activities that boost their physical energy: regular exercise, quality sleep, proper nutrition, and stress management. They don't treat these as luxuries or optional activities. They treat them as essential infrastructure for peak performance. Sleep in particular receives special attention from elite performers, while others might sacrifice sleep to work longer hours. The elite understand that sleep deprivation dramatically reduces cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and decision-making quality. They prioritize sleep hygiene, create environments conducive to quality rest, and understand that sometimes the most productive thing they can do is get more sleep rather than work longer. The elite also understand the power of recovery and renewal. They build breaks into their schedule, not as rewards for hard work, but as necessary investments in their continued performance. They might take walking meetings, practice meditation, or engage in activities that restore their mental energy. They understand that rest is not the absence of activity, it's the presence of activities that restore rather than deplete. Energy management also influences how elite performers approach relationships and social interactions. They're selective about who they spend time with, understanding that people either add to their energy or subtract from it. They actively cultivate relationships with people who inspire, challenge, and energize them, while minimizing time with people who consistently drain their energy or focus. This doesn't mean elite performers are antisocial or selfish, quite the opposite. By managing their energy carefully, they're able to show up fully present and engaged when they do interact with others. They can give their best energy to the people and activities that matter most, because they haven't scattered it across low-value interactions. The elite have also learned to batch similar activities together to minimize the energy cost of context switching. They might dedicate specific blocks of time to email, group all their meetings into certain days, or handle all their administrative tasks in one focused session. This batching reduces the mental energy required to constantly shift between different types of work. Technology plays a crucial role in elite energy management. They use tools and systems to reduce the cognitive load of routine decisions and activities. They might automate bill payments, use meal delivery services, or delegate tasks that don't require their specific expertise. They understand that decision fatigue is real, and they preserve their decision-making energy for choices that truly matter. The elite also practice what psychologists call cognitive offloading, using external systems to store information and reminders so their brain doesn't have to. They might use detailed calendars, comprehensive note-taking systems, or project management tools to keep track of commitments and ideas. This frees up mental energy for creative thinking and problem-solving rather than trying to remember everything. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers have learned to align their energy expenditure with their values and long-term goals. They regularly audit how they're spending their energy and adjust when they notice misalignment. If they find themselves spending too much energy on activities that don't contribute to their priorities, they make changes to redirect that energy toward what matters most. The cultivation of energy awareness and management is an ongoing practice. Elite performers regularly experiment with different approaches to optimize their energy, whether that's trying new sleep schedules, different types of exercise, or various productivity techniques. They understand that energy management is highly individual and that what works for others might not work for them. By treating energy as currency, elite performers gain access to levels of performance and achievement that remain closed to those who scatter their attention and drain their energy on low-value activities. They understand that in a world full of distractions and demands, the ability to focus deeply and maintain high energy levels is one of the most valuable competitive advantages they can develop. Chapter 8. Obsession is a gift. Why being too intense is their superpower. Society often treats obsession as a character flaw, something unhealthy, unbalanced, or destructive that needs to be corrected. We're taught to be well-rounded, to maintain work-life balance, and to avoid becoming too focused on any one thing. But elite performers have discovered something counterintuitive. What others call obsession is often the natural expression of deep alignment between their values, capabilities, and goals. Instead of fighting their intense focus, they've learnt to harness it as their greatest competitive advantage. The difference between destructive obsession and productive obsession lies not in the intensity of focus, but in the direction and purpose of that focus. Destructive obsession is driven by compulsion, fear, or external validation. It's about escaping something rather than creating something. Productive obsession is driven by genuine fascination, intrinsic motivation, and the desire to contribute something meaningful to the world. Elite performers have learned to distinguish between these two types and cultivate the productive version. When elite performers find something that truly captivates them, whether it's a business problem, a creative pursuit, or a field of study, they don't just dabble in it or pursue it casually. They dive deep, immersing themselves completely in understanding every aspect, every subtlety, every possibility. While others spread their attention across multiple interests, elite performers concentrate their focus like a laser, understanding that depth often matters more than breadth. This intense focus allows elite performers to see patterns and possibilities that others miss. When you've studied something obsessively, you develop an intuitive understanding that can't be taught in books or seminars. You begin to see connections that aren't obvious to casual observers. You notice subtle trends before they become mainstream. You can predict problems before they occur and identify opportunities before they become crowded. The elite understand that mastery in any field requires what researchers call deliberate practice, focused, intentional effort, aimed at improving specific aspects of performance. This kind of practice isn't enjoyable in the traditional sense. It's often difficult and sometimes frustrating. Only someone with an obsessive level of interest in improvement would be willing to engage in this type of practice consistently over the years required to achieve true expertise. Obsessive focus also provides a natural filter for decision-making. When you're deeply passionate about something, it becomes easy to say no to opportunities that don't align with your core focus. While others struggle with decision-making because everything seems potentially interesting, elite performers have clear criteria. Does this advance their obsession or distract from it? This clarity eliminates decision fatigue and allows them to concentrate their resources on what matters most. The elite have also learned that obsession provides sustainable motivation. While others rely on external motivators like money, recognition, or pressure from others, elite performers are driven by intrinsic fascination with their chosen field. This internal motivation is much more reliable and sustainable than external motivators, which can disappear or lose their power over time. When you're genuinely obsessed with something, you don't need to force yourself to work on it, you need to force yourself to stop. However, elite performers understand that productive obsession requires intelligent application. They've learned to obsess strategically, focusing their intensity on activities that provide the highest leverage toward their goals. They might obsess over understanding their customers' needs, perfecting their craft, or developing innovative solutions to important problems. They don't just work obsessively, they obsess over working on the right things. The elite also understand that obsession can be channeled and directed. They might start with a broad fascination and gradually narrow their focus as they identify the specific aspects that most capture their interest and align with their strengths. They understand that obsession isn't just about working longer hours, it's about thinking more deeply, questioning more thoroughly, and caring more intensely about the quality of their work. This intense focus often makes elite performers seem different or extreme to others who don't share their level of passion. They might think about their work during vacations, read industry publications for fun, or spend weekends working on projects that excite them. While others might see this as unhealthy, elite performers see it as the natural expression of doing work that truly matters to them. The elite have learned to embrace the social costs of their obsession while maximizing the benefits. They understand that not everyone will appreciate their intensity or share their level of commitment, and they're okay with that. They surround themselves with people who understand and support their passion, while not letting criticism from others dilute their focus. Obsessive focus also leads to what psychologists call flow states, periods of complete absorption in activity where time seems to disappear and performance peaks. Elite performers actively cultivate these states because they understand that their best work happens when they're completely immersed in what they're doing. They create environments and routines that support deep focus and minimize interruptions. The elite also understand that obsession breeds innovation. When you care deeply about something and think about it constantly, you naturally begin to see new possibilities and creative solutions. You're not satisfied with good enough. You're always looking for ways to do it better, faster, or more effectively. This constant drive for improvement leads to breakthroughs that casual participants never discover. Elite performers have learned to manage the potential downsides of obsession. They understand the importance of maintaining their physical health, preserving key relationships, and avoiding burnout. They might schedule regular breaks, maintain non-negotiable commitments to family time, or engage in physical activities that help them process their intense mental focus. They've learned that managing their obsession intelligently allows them to sustain it over the long term. The elite also use their obsession as a source of energy, rather than allowing it to become a source of anxiety. They've learned to enjoy the process of deep focus, rather than just focusing on outcomes. They find satisfaction in the daily work of improvement and discovery, not just in the eventual results. This process orientation allows them to maintain their enthusiasm even when progress is slow or setbacks occur. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that their obsession is a gift, both to themselves and to the world. Their willingness to dive deep and focus intensely allows them to solve problems, create innovations, and generate value that wouldn't exist otherwise. They understand that the world needs people who care deeply and focus intensely, even if that intensity sometimes makes others uncomfortable. The cultivation of productive obsession requires honest self-reflection about what truly captivates you versus what you think should captivate you. Elite performers have learned to distinguish between genuine fascination and artificial interest created by external expectations. They've given themselves permission to be intensely focused on what matters to them, even if it seems unusual or extreme to others. By embracing their obsessive tendencies rather than fighting them, elite performers gain access to levels of expertise, innovation, and achievement that remain closed to those who spread their attention too thin. They understand that in a world of infinite distractions and superficial engagement, the ability to focus obsessively on what matters is not a flaw to be corrected, it's a superpower to be developed. Chapter 9. Environment is leverage. Who they spend time with and why. Human beings are environmental creatures. We adapt to and are shaped by our surroundings far more than we realize. The elite have recognized this fundamental truth and turned it into a strategic advantage. Instead of hoping willpower alone will drive their success, they engineer their environment to make success more likely and failure more difficult. This includes not just their physical space, but more importantly, the people they surround themselves with. While most people drift into relationships based on proximity, convenience, or chance, elite performers are intentional about their social environment. They understand that the people you spend time with don't just influence your mood or social life. They shape your beliefs, standards, expectations, and ultimately, your results. They've made the strategic decision to surround themselves with people who elevate rather than diminish their potential. The elite seek out relationships with people who are operating at higher levels than they currently are. This isn't about using people or being inauthentic. It's about understanding that growth happens most naturally when you're exposed to higher standards and bigger thinking. When everyone around you is achieving at a certain level, that level becomes your new normal. What seemed impossible when you're in a different environment becomes expected when you're surrounded by people who are already doing it. This principle extends beyond just professional success to include character traits and mindsets. Elite performers surround themselves with people who demonstrate the qualities they want to develop: discipline, integrity, resilience, creativity, or leadership. They understand that character traits are contagious. Spend time with highly disciplined people, and you naturally become more disciplined yourself. Surround yourself with people who make excuses, and excuse-making becomes normalized. The elite are also strategic about the diversity of their relationships. They don't just surround themselves with people who are exactly like them. They seek out relationships with people who have different skills, perspectives, and experiences that complement their own. They might cultivate relationships with people who are better at execution if they're strong at strategy, or with people who are more creative if they tend to be more analytical. This diversity expands their thinking and capabilities. However, elite performers are equally intentional about limiting or eliminating relationships that consistently drain their energy or undermine their goals. They've learned to identify people who are chronic complainers, excuse makers, or negative thinkers, and they minimize their exposure to these influences. This doesn't mean they're heartless or unsympathetic. It means they understand that their social environment directly impacts their ability to achieve their goals and serve others at the highest level. The elite also understand the power of peer accountability. They deliberately cultivate relationships with people who will challenge them, question their assumptions, and hold them accountable to their stated commitments. They want people in their life who will tell them the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, and who won't accept mediocrity from them, even when they might be tempted to accept it from themselves. These accountability relationships work because they're mutual. Elite performers don't just want to be held accountable. They're willing to hold others accountable as well. They create relationships where high standards are the norm, and where calling each other out on poor performance or thinking is seen as an act of friendship rather than criticism. The elite also leverage their relationships for learning and growth. They actively seek out mentors, advisors, and coaches who can provide guidance based on experience they haven't yet acquired. They understand that learning from someone who has already walked the path they're trying to travel can accelerate their progress dramatically. They're willing to invest time, energy, and often money to access these relationships because they understand the return on investment. But elite performers don't just take from their relationships. They're equally focused on providing value to others. They understand that the best relationships are reciprocal, and they actively look for ways to help the people in their network achieve their goals. This might involve making introductions, sharing opportunities, providing feedback, or simply being a supportive presence during challenging times. The elite have also learned to create what researchers call weak tie relationships, connections with people outside their immediate circle who can provide access to different networks, opportunities, and perspectives. They understand that some of the most valuable opportunities come not from close friends but from acquaintances who move in different circles and can provide access to resources and information they wouldn't otherwise encounter. Physical environment design is equally important to elite performers. They create spaces that support their highest priorities and eliminate distractions that undermine their focus. This might mean having a dedicated workspace that's optimized for deep thinking, removing televisions from bedrooms to improve sleep quality, or organizing their home in a way that makes healthy choices easier and unhealthy choices more difficult. The elite understand that their environment should make their desired behaviors automatic and their undesired behaviors difficult. If they want to exercise regularly, they might keep workout clothes visible and easily accessible while storing junk food in hard-to-reach places. If they want to read more, they might leave books in prominent locations while hiding their phone charger in a drawer. This environmental design extends to their information environment as well. Elite performers carefully curate what information they consume, understanding that what goes into their mind affects what comes out of it. They might subscribe to high-quality publications while unsubscribing from sources that provide more noise than signal. They might use apps that limit their social media usage or block distracting websites during work hours. The elite also design their environment to support their energy and creativity. They pay attention to lighting, temperature, colors, and sounds, understanding that these factors can significantly impact their mood, focus, and performance. They might invest in high-quality lighting for their workspace, use plants to improve air quality, or play specific types of music that enhance their concentration. Technology environment management is particularly crucial in today's world. Elite performers are intentional about how they configure their devices and digital tools. They might turn off notifications for non-essential apps, organize their digital files in ways that reduce cognitive load, or use tools that automate routine tasks so they can focus on high-value activities. The elite also understand the importance of environmental variety. While they create optimized spaces for their regular activities, they also expose themselves to new environments that can stimulate different types of thinking and creativity. They might work from different locations, travel to new places, or simply change their routine to expose themselves to different stimuli and perspectives. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers regularly audit their environment, both social and physical, to ensure it's still supporting their goals. They understand that as they grow and their objectives evolve, their environment needs to evolve as well. Relationships that were helpful at one stage might become limiting at another. Spaces that supported previous goals might need to be reconfigured for new objectives. The cultivation of an elite environment requires constant attention and occasional difficult decisions. It might mean ending friendships that have become toxic, investing money in environmental improvements, or changing living situations to better support growth. Elite performers understand that these investments in their environment are actually investments in their future success. By treating their environment as leverage, rather than just accepting whatever circumstances they find themselves in, elite performers create conditions that naturally pull them towards success, rather than having to constantly push against resistance. They understand that willpower is limited, but environmental design can make desired behaviors automatic and sustained success more likely. Chapter 10. They think differently because they train differently. The human brain is remarkably plastic. It physically changes based on how we use it. Neuroscientists have discovered that our thinking patterns literally reshape our neural pathways, strengthening some connections while allowing others to weaken. The elite have intuitively understood this principle long before science confirmed it, and they've used this knowledge to systematically train their minds for peak performance. While most people allow their thinking patterns to develop randomly, shaped by whatever influences they happen to encounter, elite performers approach mental training with the same intentionality that athletes approach physical training. They understand that just as you can train your body to become stronger, faster, and more resilient, you can train your mind to become more focused, creative, and effective. This mental training begins with metacognition. Thinking about thinking. Elite performers are highly aware of their own thought processes. They notice when their mind is sharp versus when it's sluggish, when they're thinking clearly versus when they're being reactive, when they're being creative versus when they're being analytical. This awareness allows them to optimize their mental state for different types of tasks and challenges. The elite have developed what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different thinking frameworks depending on the situation. They can think systematically when analyzing problems, creatively when generating solutions, strategically when planning, and tactically when executing. Most people get stuck in one mode of thinking, but elite performers can consciously shift their cognitive approach to match their current needs. One of the most powerful mental training practices of the elite is scenario planning, regularly imagining different possible futures and thinking through how they would respond to various challenges and opportunities. This mental rehearsal prepares them for uncertainty and helps them respond more quickly and effectively when unexpected situations arise. They're not just planning for what they expect to happen, they're preparing for what might happen. The elite also practice what could be called perspective training, deliberately shifting their viewpoint to see situations from different angles. They might imagine how their competitors view a market opportunity, how their customers experience their product, or how future generations might judge their current decisions. This multi-perspective thinking helps them make more informed decisions and anticipate consequences others might miss. Mental contrasting is another powerful technique used by elite performers. Instead of just visualizing positive outcomes, they also imagine potential obstacles and setbacks, then mentally rehearse how they would overcome them. This prepares them psychologically for difficulties and helps them develop contingency plans before problems arise. They're optimistic about outcomes but realistic about challenges. The elite have also learned to train their attention like a muscle. They practice sustained focus through activities like meditation, deep reading, or complex problem solving. They work on selective attention by practicing filtering relevant information from noise. They develop divided attention by learning to manage multiple priorities without becoming overwhelmed. This attention training becomes the foundation for all other mental performance. Deliberate practice of decision-making is another key component of elite mental training. They regularly review their past decisions to identify patterns in their thinking that led to good or poor outcomes. They study decision-making frameworks and apply them to real situations. They practice making decisions under pressure and with incomplete information. Over time, their decision-making becomes faster and more accurate. The elite also train their mental resilience through controlled exposure to stress and uncertainty. They deliberately put themselves in challenging situations where they must perform under pressure, think clearly despite distractions, or maintain composure in the face of criticism. This mental toughening prepares them for the inevitable challenges of operating at elite levels. Memory training is often overlooked, but crucial for elite performance. Elite performers develop systems for encoding, storing, and retrieving information effectively. They might use techniques like spaced repetition to retain important information long-term, or memory palaces to organize complex knowledge. They understand that the ability to access relevant information quickly can be a significant competitive advantage. The elite practice what researchers call counterfactual thinking, imagining how things could have been different if certain variables had changed. This helps them understand cause and effect relationships more clearly and identify the key factors that drive outcomes in their field. They're constantly learning from both successes and failures by thinking through alternative scenarios. Systems thinking is another critical mental skill that elite performers deliberately develop. They train themselves to see connections, feedback loops, and unintended consequences that others miss. Instead of thinking in linear cause and effect chains, they think in networks and systems. This helps them solve complex problems and anticipate how changes in one area might affect other areas. The elite also practice emotional regulation training. They work on recognizing their emotional states, understanding what triggers different emotions, and managing their emotional responses to maintain peak performance. This might involve meditation, breathing techniques, or cognitive reframing exercises. They understand that emotional intelligence is just as important as analytical intelligence for sustained success. Creative thinking receives special attention in elite mental training. They regularly expose themselves to new experiences, ideas, and perspectives to keep their thinking fresh and innovative. They practice generating multiple solutions to problems, combining ideas from different domains, and questioning assumptions that others take for granted. They understand that creativity is not just talent, it's a skill that can be developed. The elite also train their intuition by learning to recognize and trust their gut feelings, while also knowing when to override them with analytical thinking. They understand that intuition is often pattern recognition happening below the conscious level, and they work to develop this unconscious processing ability through extensive experience and reflection. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers train their minds to stay curious and continue learning throughout their lives. They actively fight against the tendency to become rigid in their thinking as they gain experience and success. They regularly expose themselves to ideas that challenge their current beliefs and seek out people who think differently than they do. This mental training happens through both formal practices and informal habits. Elite performers might have specific routines like morning meditation, evening reflection, or regular journaling. They might also have informal practices like asking better questions during conversations, playing strategic games, or reading books outside their field to stimulate different types of thinking. The key is consistency and intentionality. Just as physical fitness requires regular exercise, mental fitness requires regular training. Elite performers don't just hope their thinking will improve, they actively work on developing specific cognitive skills that support their goals and performance. The compound effect of this mental training is profound. Over years and decades, elite performers develop thinking capabilities that seem almost supernatural to others. They can see patterns others miss, make connections others don't see, and solve problems others find impossible. But this isn't magic, it's the result of systematic mental training that has literally rewired their brains for peak performance. By understanding that thinking is a skill that can be trained rather than a fixed trait they're born with, elite performers gain access to continuous improvement in their most important tool, their mind. They become not just better at what they do, but better at learning, adapting, and evolving as their circumstances change and their goals expand. Conclusion: the elite mindset integration. The 10 principles outlined in this book are not meant to be applied in isolation. The true power of elite thinking comes from integrating these concepts into a coherent worldview and systematic approach to life and work. Each principle reinforces and amplifies the others, creating a compound effect that transforms not just what you achieve, but who you become in the process. The elite understand that mindset is not just about positive thinking or motivation, it's about developing a sophisticated mental operating system that allows you to navigate complexity, embrace uncertainty, and perform at your highest level consistently. This operating system becomes so natural that it feels effortless, but it requires intentional development and constant refinement. As you begin to implement these principles, remember that elite performance is not about perfection, it's about consistency, learning, and continuous improvement. The goal is not to master all these concepts immediately, but to begin the journey of thinking and operating at a higher level, understanding that this development is a lifelong process that compounds over time. The world needs more people who think like the elite, not because elite thinking makes you better than others, but because it makes you better able to serve others, solve important problems, and contribute meaningfully to the world around you. The principles in this book are not just tools for personal success, they're tools for making a positive impact that extends far beyond your individual achievements. Your journey toward elite thinking begins with a single decision, the decision to take complete ownership of your development and to approach that development with the same intensity and intentionality that the world's most successful people bring to everything they do. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not just about talent or opportunity, it's about how you think, and how you think can be transformed starting today.